Everyone knows Darkseid, the immortal new god and ruler of Apokolips, and arguably DC's most iconic cosmic villain. Darkseid is everywhere, from Justice League cartoons, blockbuster films, major video games, and countless comics. There's basically no corner of DC media that he hasn't conquered. But here's something that never quite made any sense to me. Darkseid is only one half of a legendary rivalry. He's supposed to have a powerful counterpart from the planet New Genesis named Highfather, who embodies peace and creation to contrast Darkseid's oppression and destruction. You know, Highfather, the space-Gandalf looking guy who can bench press a star, commands the alpha effect, could dogwalk the entire Justice League backwards in his sleep, maybe one of the most important figures in all of DC's cosmology? Despite all of that being true, most people barely even know who Highfather is. It's weird, right? We only ever see Darkseid fighting Superman, but never his actual nemesis. It's sort of like if we got a movie all about, I don't know, Ultron, but he never even meets Hank Pym. He just fights Iron Man the whole time. Wait a minute. Anyway, before we can answer the question, where is Highfather, we first need to answer, who is Highfather? Grab your popcorn, I'm about to hit you with some crazy cosmic lore. One of Jack Kirby's New God additions to the DC universe, Highfather's story begins with the fall of Second World. About 8 billion years ago, the old gods that created many of the planets of the universe were wiped out during Ragnarok, and all that was left of them, their living atoms, became the basis for Third World, a planet of gods known as Galactica, where a new generation of deities was born. Among these new gods were two brothers, Isaiah and Uxas. Unfortunately, war broke out between the two brothers when Uxas killed Isaiah's wife. After a long and bloody conflict, Uxas was cast off the destroyed world of Galactica. In his exile, he and his followers populated Apokolips, and Uxas eventually got his hands on the Omega Effect, ascending to his role as the great tyrant, Darkseid. Left to rebuild Galactica, Isaiah was lost, a widower, king of thousands of murdered subjects, betrayed by his brother, so he went on a journey of self-discovery. He wandered, lost, until he connected with the Source Wall, an ancient relic left behind by the old gods that encompassed the entire multiverse. Inside it was the Source, the first primal energy and truth of the entire DC universe. The Source imbued Isaiah with the Alpha Effect. It gave him wisdom, power, and a new purpose. He created a utopia on the destroyed Galactica, naming himself Highfather. He established this fourth world under the name New Genesis. New Genesis and Apokolips are like yin and yang, eternally opposed, locked in a never-ending cosmic beef. They warred for centuries until eventually a peace treaty was reached. Highfather and Darkseid agreed to a ceasefire, offering each other their sons as collateral. Highfather's son, scot-free, was given to Darkseid, while Highfather adopted Darkseid's son, Orion. And after this point, Highfather ruled New Genesis for billions of years as a god, king, spiritual leader, and mouthpiece for the Source. He wields the Alpha Effect, a counter to Darkseid's Omega Effect. While Darkseid's beams erase or enslave, Highfather's energy creates, heals, and uplifts. His Wonder Staff, linked directly to the Source, lets him tap into reality warping power. Think Green Lantern Ring, but on steroids, fueled by cosmic good vibes. He can imbue other beings with near endless power, heal almost any injury or illness, and stalemate Darkseid in his Godhead form. Effortless, multiverse-shattering power. That puts him in a league completely beyond all of the other new gods. He can even use Alpha Bullets, an inverse of Darkseid's Omega Beams. These bullets summon other beings directly to him from anywhere in reality. But all this power comes at a cost. You see, there's a reason he decided to change his name to Highfather after viewing the Source. It's because after that day, he truly wasn't Isaiah anymore. Accepting that endless cosmic power severed the human parts of him. His love and desire and anger and regret, all of it was ripped away, transformed into a being known as Infinity Man, and all that was left was Highfather, the cold, rigid, steadfast god needed to rule Utopia. He chooses pacifism and diplomacy at all times, not because he can't fight, but because he's intimately aware of the true horrors of endless war. He willingly bears the emotional scars of sacrificing his own son for the greater good, but he can bear them because the scars only go skin deep. After Isaiah purged his emotions into Infinity Man, what was left was a god king strong enough to carry New Genesis into the future. Highfather is more than just a powerful deity, he's an incredibly nuanced character who carries enormous emotional depth and philosophical weight. So, okay, this guy is awesome, and James Gunn should definitely give us a New Gods movie or Max series or whatever, but why don't we ever see him in any adaptations of anything? It's not like he's an obscure character. We also don't see Detective Chimp in that many DC adaptations, but Detective Chimp doesn't have a nemesis who shows up in literally everything ever. Superman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, Smallville, Injustice, the DC AMU, Young Justice, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Teen Titans Go. Darkseid even shows up in frickin' Super Friends. I think Highfather is just barely in like 2 of those, really briefly. So what is the deal? Well, there's a few reasons. First, Darkseid is a superstar. DC's Thanos, before Thanos was cool. He's got that iconic design, terrifying Omega beams, and a personality that screams final boss. Writers and fans love him. Highfather, meanwhile, is more subdued. His peace-loving, diplomatic vibe doesn't scream blockbuster like Darkseid's world-conquering tyranny. In the comics, Darkseid's a go-to for big events. Justice League, Final Crisis, you name it. Highfather, he's often a side character, popping up to give cryptic advice or bless Orion's mission. He always gets relegated to the wise old mentor role, which is easy to sideline for the action hero, or cut from an adaptation entirely. Likewise, introducing Darkseid into a story immediately skyrockets the tension, while bringing in Highfather has the risk of the opposite effect. Oh, don't worry guys, God is here. We're all gonna be okay. If not handled correctly, all the drama and stakes can evaporate. Another issue is the New Gods niche status. Jack Kirby's New Gods saga is a cult classic, but it's never been as mainstream as Batman or Superman. DC tends to prioritize Earth-based heroes for casual fans, leaving cosmic characters like Highfather in the dust. And when New Gods do show up, it's usually Orion or Mr. Miracle stealing the show. Orion's got that gritty anti-hero edge, and Scott Free's tortured escape artist gimmick is easier to market. And don't get it twisted, I'm not pretending either of those two are popular, they're both D-listers. But even so, they both have more draw than Highfather. Highfather's role as a leader often makes him less dynamic in a punch-em-up type comic. He's more about strategy and moral dilemmas, which can feel slow compared to Darkseid blasting everything and punching holes in planets. And I'm not gonna lie, the lore of Fourth World is a complete mess. The version of Isaiah's story I gave you was one of like 3 of them, after the countless multiverse shenanigans and timeline resets. If you want to use Highfather as anything more than space-Gandalf, who gives our heroes some sage wisdom, you need a lot of lore explained. On the flip side, you don't need much for Darkseid. He is the god of evil, and he wants everyone to be very not happy. Setup complete. Let's watch Superman punch him in the face. So what do we do about all this? If you can't tell, I would love for Highfather to get the same sort of attention as Darkseid. I think in the animated series and live-action films, New Genesis should be a place we can explore and experience just like Gotham or Metropolis. And we deserve at least one adaptation that tells us Isaiah's story and actually sets up his dichotomy with Darkseid. And I think I know how to do it without taking away the rivalry between Apokolips and the Justice League. Superman will still get to punch Darkseid in the face just a whole lot. So here's my pitch. A New Gods limited series set in the DCU is the move, maybe 8 to 10 episodes. Animation handles cosmic weirdness way better than live action. Something in the general art style of Creature Commandos with the super comic accurate costumes to depict that classic Kirby artwork would be perfect. But I could also see live action working very well too, as the show won't be a bunch of flashy space battles, those are mostly for the climactic showdowns. For this series, center Highfather as the protagonist, not just a background guru. Focus on his relationship with adopted son Orion, Orion's fiancée Becca, and perhaps an escaped Scott Free and his wife Big Barda. The series is set around a political conflict. Highfather suspects that Apokolips has been covertly breaking their peace treaty and attacking small populations of New Genesis indirectly. He has to navigate this investigation into this mystery while not letting Apokolips ambassadors know he's onto them, all while balancing a political uprising against his son. The people of New Genesis distrust Orion because he's Darkseid's biological son, and Scott because he spent his life on Apokolips. And when Highfather does run into danger, he must limit his own incredible power. Use too much of it, and he might accidentally break New Genesis's side of the peace treaty. This is a reasonable and dramatic way to keep stakes high without debuffing the character. Interspersed with this plot in the present, we get to explore his past. Flashbacks to his time with Uxas, when they were brothers who loved each other. His wife Avia's death, his rage and sorrow, and his transformation via the Source. At the beginning of the series, it's a mystery why the Highfather of the present is so cold and unfeeling compared to the Isaiah of the flashbacks. He still has emotions, but they're muted, dulled. Things that should make him scream or sob only elicit a weak frown. We could get subtle illusions and dream sequences that hint at Infinity Man, the lost piece of Isaiah abandoned long ago who desires to join with Highfather again, but he refuses. And as the series goes on, Highfather stumbles onto Darkseid's plan. He's discovered the location of the anti-life equation, which can be used to subjugate all of reality beneath his boot. Highfather knows the only way to stop this is with its opposite, the life equation, something he desperately searches for, leaving New Genesis to Orion in his absence, which has dire consequences. It becomes very clear that only Highfather, in his infinite wisdom, can lead their utopia. Finally, Highfather makes it to the Source Wall, where he risks annihilation to ask a single question. Where can he find the life equation? And the answer he's given drives him to despair. Only the White Lantern holds such a power. To achieve the true power of life, he needs to completely master the emotional spectrum. Highfather tries it. He gathers each of the colors of the lantern rings, adorning them to his wonder staff, but it's fruitless. In order to attain the power he needs to save New Genesis from Darkseid, he'll need to abandon the power of the Source that allowed New Genesis to exist in the first place. He needs to become Isaiah once again, and hope that Fourth World doesn't fall once Highfather is gone. The finale would show us Highfather giving up the power of the Alpha effect, being transformed back into Isaiah, and going on a spiritual journey to rediscover Infinity Man and master his emotions. We would see him reconcile with all the choices he's made in the eons he's ruled as Highfather, and the emotions he should have been feeling. The guilt of giving away Scott, the love and deeply buried resentment he feels for Orion, his eternally mixed feelings about his brother Uxas, all of it. The series would end on a cliffhanger. Isaiah seems to master the power of the life equation, but he disappears in the process, leaving a now rioting New Genesis in the hands of Orion and Becca, as Scott and Barda are captured and taken back to Apokolips. From there, you could continue on into a series focused on Orion, or perhaps conclude his story in another movie or series. But we would get to see what happens to Isaiah when the Justice League gets their eventual showdown with Darkseid. Superman leads the Justice League to face down the forces of Apokolips, but they all fall to their knees in the face of Darkseid, who's achieved anti-life, and can now effortlessly subjugate even our greatest heroes, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. It is only then that Isaiah makes his return. Wrestling with the power of the life equation, he only has enough control for one action. He faces his brother for the first time in centuries, no longer Highfather. Darkseid ridicules him for his weakness, but Isaiah, now come to terms with everything he feels for his brother, has a message for him. Long ago, I lost the love and pain that made me so much like these mortals. I too thought it made me weak. Uxas, know this. Mortals are not weak. Their love and their pain is what makes them strong. And with all his effort, Isaiah uses the life equation to strip his brother of anti-life, freeing the League from Darkseid's control. He collapses. His story is over, leaving Superman to fly in and, yes, punch Darkseid. Stay frosty.